Welcome back. So this week, the Western Cape High Court will hear a case relating to the decriminalisation of sex work in South Africa. Now, various groups say they are confident that sex work will be decriminalised, and we're really keen to get your thoughts on this. Is decriminalising of sex work in South Africa a step in the right direction? Send us your WhatsApp on 072 110 5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Let's get into our panel. We are joined by Asjigi Coalition for Decriminalized Sex Work's National Coordinator, Ms. Constance Mate. We're joined by the Moral Regeneration Movement, Mr. Seth Mazibuko, as well as the National Prosecuting Authority's Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Dr. Mkhuseli Jogani. Guys, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us in what I think is an incredibly important discussion. And I do want to start with you, Constance, if we perhaps are just able to set the tone, just where we are right now, in your view, in the conversation of the decriminalization of sex work. I see, for instance, this case that will be heard in the Western Cape High Court, lodged by the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force, SWET. But one of the things that they've talked about is we're well on the way, and there's a lot of optimism that we will see sex work decriminalized in South Africa.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me this evening. Right, to start from, we are really excited and we are very happy because we are now at the point where we see the things and the change around us. After some years, 28 years advocating for the decriminalization of sex work, this is the first time in a history for us to be in this stage. Even though there is a bill that is ongoing, but at this point of time, with today's witness, we believe that the change has begun and the journey has just begun. And looking the things the way it went today at the court, everything went well, everything went very smoothly, and we are not panicking at all. We are not afraid of anything at all because we have enough evidence. And with the backup of the sex workers behind, we are very confident that this is our time. This is our time to win the case. And this is the time for sex workers' rights to be recognized. The journey just began today. So we are very excited, and the way the judge and the other institute, the way they handled the matter today, in amicus, the discussion around the amicus and the way the amicus presented, we are really happy. And also regarding our opposition, we are also happy for them to apply.
Constance, are you still there? Okay, Constance's network giving us some trouble there. We'll get her back on the line so we can get a clearer one. But I am keen to hear that broader argument of why this is an important step, why the decriminalizing of sex work is important. But at the same time, we've also seen the National Prosecuting Authority now having issued what is a moratorium on prosecutions of sex work. Dr. Jogani, perhaps you can talk to us about why we're seeing that taking place and where you expect that will lead us.
Good evening, Sister Nalisori, Sister Naledi, and
Yes,
the
sir.
viewers at home, and the panelists. Look, the view of the National Prosecuting Authority around this issue. One, remember, we were cited, as the respondent, I think, as the first respondent in this matter, and we've taken a view of abiding, with whatever the court will decide, on this issue, impugning or that seeks to impugn, three provisions. That is Section 19 of Act 23 of 1957, as well as Section 20, subsection 1, capital letter A, paragraph A of the same Act, as well as Section 11, of the Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act 32 of 2007. To that end, as NPA, we have engaged, with all our directors of public prosecutions across all the divisions to say that to the extent that this matter is still in court, let us at this point respect, the court process and ensure that we put a moratorium, on the prosecution of sex workers, up until this matter has been dealt with by the court as well by the legislative process that is underway in the country.
Yeah.
So that is the position of the NPA at this point in time. But I must say, though, that the moratorium that we're speaking about has not been declared, by legislation. It's a decision that has been taken internally by the NPA to say that in the light of these two processes that are unfolding in the country, let us put a moratorium on prosecuting all these cases. So the effect of this moratorium is to say that all cases, of sex workers, will not be enrolled in our courts. Those that have already been enrolled will be withdrawn. Those where perpetrators, have already pleaded guilty, would postpone them up until, this process has been finished, by both the court as well as the legislative process. So
Yeah.
that is the view, the position of the NPA.
Well, we'll come back to you because a little bit later on, perhaps you can talk to us about just previously to this moratorium, just the kind of data that we do have on prosecutions against sex workers in South Africa and really what some of those have looked like. But let's bring in our other guest now, Mr. Seth Mazibuko of the Moral Regeneration Movement. I mean, just your perspective on where we are. You've got Constance quite optimistic that there will be light at the end of the tunnel for sex workers who want to see their work decriminalized. Is this good for the country in your view?
Yeah. We do not determine as moral regeneration as to what is good for the country, but we would be very active in what is ethical and moral for the country. And we are driven by the principle that says morals are supposed to be what a group of community or a group of people or a group of society agrees upon as being the principles and values. So if South Africa says to the country, decriminalization of sex workers is right, we are saying, let's talk about that. How is that ethical and moral? Let me make an example. We have, as moral regeneration, what we call the Charter of Positive Values. The very first value says respect human dignity and equality. If what is required by sectors stands firmly on, and we are saying if it then promotes also equality and integrity, let's go for it. So whatever the court finds as a direction, we shall have to. And this is where South Africa has a problem, Naledi. South Africa makes laws. South Africa policies. But unfortunately, it doesn't say how do those policies supposed to be implemented? And how are those policies supposed to be monitored and evaluated? We worry about our sisters, even brothers that are going to be in this business.
Yeah.
How are they protected? Where do they report? What are the bylaws? What's happening? That which is going to protect them.
Yeah.
They're vulnerable. They'll be out there in different places. How do we protect them? Is this going to have those laws and regulations as to how are they going to be protected, or how is this business going to be run?
Okay, and those are very big, important questions. And so I'm keen to hear the thoughts of our viewers as well on this one. So we're taking your WhatsApps on 07211055584. What you make of efforts by activists to see sex work decriminalized in South Africa, with the court process playing out in the Western Cape High Court. Let's bring some of those messages up from our viewers. Anonymous said, I said no to decriminalization of sex work. Let the government create jobs for youth and give financial assistance to those who want to start businesses. Okay, Anonymous, thank you for sending in your message. Randani says, sex workers are not necessarily criminals. They do what they do to provide for their families. Government should register them because it could lead to human trafficking, as it is a lucrative industry across the globe. Brendani, thank you so much for that. Alfred Silamela says to decriminalize sex work in South Africa will just to create chaos. And if the government does that, it will be a confirmation of total failure to create jobs. Okay, Alfred saying that. Maduna says sex workers should be legalized. No crime committed by sex workers. Maduna, thank you for that. Constance, I want to come back to you. We lost you a little bit, and I think here's an opportunity for us to really expand on the points that have been made by Mr. Seth Mazibuko to say, number one, why decriminalize, right? And you talk, obviously many organizations will talk about that will give protection to sex workers against human trafficking and gender-based violence. And I'd like to hear your perspective on that. But also, if you will, just the sort of opportunities that could come with the decriminalizing of sex work. I see Sweat, for instance, having talked about tax revenue that can possibly be collected from the industry.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I like the fact that Dr. Mazibuko, Seth Mazibuko, have mentioned that the issue of the decriminalization is not a moral issue. We shouldn't look at it into a moral perspective. Rather, we look at it into a human rights perspective. Right. When we talk about the issue of the trafficking, it's totally clear we have the laws in this country and the policies around the trafficking. As I'm advocating for the full decriminalization of sex work, we are totally against of trafficking. Right. When we speak about the trafficking issue and decriminalization issue, this is totally two separate things. We are talking about the adult consensual sex work. This is what we are talking about. We are totally against the trafficking. We normally refer the cases of the trafficking into the relevant institutions that they deals with those kind of matters. Right. Let's talk about right now. If they are accusing that the decriminalization is going to open the doors for all the criminal activities, what is currently happening under the criminalization right now? We have got a high rate of crime. People impose and use the industry to create a lot of crimes and create a lot of wrong activities. But once the industry is decriminalized, those two things, they'll be totally separated and highlighted, and people, they should face the really crime and look at the sex work as work and respect the right of choice of other people. Right. So these are the issues that people need to understand, that we are not pushing or opening the doors for people to come and utilize the interest in a wrong way. We are protecting the people in the industry, those who deserve their human rights to be recognized. And we're not going to bring the new people or underage, as they always say. The underage, that is a child exploitation. It's needed to dealt with according to the law. So these kind of issues of all those people, they are trying to bring it and attach it with the sex working is totally different issues. They need to separate those issues, and they need to remove that moral issue, a point of view and focus. Even when you look at today in the court, all our amicus in the presentation they presented and before the court, it was based on human rights.
Yeah.
So we need to understand this issue. Where is it taking us to?
Right. And I want to bring in Dr. Jogani now again from the National Prosecuting Authority, and it's an issue I touched on earlier, is to prior to this moratorium that we see out from the NPA, in the meantime to see that there are no prosecutions of sex workers pending this court decision. What the data has looked like, though, in the prosecution of sex work in South Africa, perhaps in the past few years, what data we have been able to collect, and you hear Constance talking about the criminalization of sex workers actually led to high levels of crime linked to the sort of crimes that can be attached to the work that has been done in that particular space. And I mean, and she's not even focusing just on on trafficking, but a lot more of that, even gender-based violence. So the data that we have as to the trickle-down effect of criminal activity coming out of criminalized sex work.
Thank you, Naledi. There is no really empirical evidence to suggest that prostitution or sex work has led to a lot of criminal activity, to the extent that even the number of cases that we have in our court rolls, around this issue of sex work are very minimal. But I think the fundamental challenge that I think we have, is that these pieces of legislation, or these sections that we have just mentioned, Section 20 and Section 19 and Section 11, sometimes are used incorrectly so, by other law enforcement agencies, to harass sex workers. That's why we are saying as NPA, we're taking a stand to say that we want to put a moratorium so that we don't prosecute these cases up until this matter has been dealt with in the court, as well as the legislative process has been finalized. The number of cases that we have currently now in our role are very, very, very minimal. And in the main, you see that those cases are emanating mainly from the Western Cape, that is Cape Town in particular. So we don't have a high number of cases arising from sex work. But I can't really say that, these cases, really contribute towards the commission of crime. Yes, if there is a situation, where, for instance, sex workers, are being, for instance, criminalized themselves, wasn't the main, they are the targets, not the other way around, In most cases, you'd find that the most people that are criminalized, more than everybody else, are the sex workers themselves. So that's why, as NPA, we've taken this conscious decision to say that we are putting a moratorium up until this has been settled in the court of law. So in other words, as NPA, we don't have a view at this point in time in terms of the pros and cons of criminalizing or decriminalizing sex works, but will be guided, by the outcome of the court processes that is underway currently, Naledi.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about what it is that we want to see at the end of this process that runs in the Western Cape High Court for the NPA, certainly for organizations representing and speaking for sex workers. And Mr. Seth Mazibuko with the Moral Regeneration Movement will also talk to us about the conversations we need to be having in our own communities, not just about why some may find themselves in, needing to become sex workers, but also how it is that our communities need to be treating those individuals. We'll get into that and more on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. So this week, the Western Cape High Court hearing some legal arguments that have been put forward to work towards the decriminalisation of sex work in South Africa. And we continue with that panel, taking your calls as well on 010-594-6010 and your WhatsApps on 072-110-5584. Let's hear from Temba, who's called in from Mthatha. Temba, good evening and thank you for calling.
Hello, Naledi, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you so much for calling. Talk to us.
Yeah, we can't sell out our ladies to criminals on streets. It should not be allowed. I think the NPA people are confused. They could not even prosecute the Zondo Commission cases. They come and confuse us here. What we need to do as government is provide job opportunities to the ladies, educate the girl child, provide work for them, and not sell them on the street. That's my contribution, Naledi.
Okay. Temba in Mthatha saying what we need to see is the creation of jobs for our most vulnerable. Thank you so much for that contribution. And I think a great place for you to pick up as well, Mr. Mazibuko, what we need to get right within our very own community stemming from this discussion.
Just last week, Naledi, we, as Moral Regeneration Movement, had a tough, tearful conversation about, women who are killing their own children, maternal filicide. It was a tough one. We were trying to find out, how do you deal with these issues? And we feel challenged again, and we have instructed all our structures to look into this community, into this subject seriously, because it is a phenomenon that is coming out strongly in our communities. We are going to do the same thing after, the pronouncements on this issue. We are going to be calling upon communities to discuss this issue. In the African context, it might have a different meaning, but in the general universal context and in other academic structures, and political for that matter, structures, it might look different. But there must be a lot of engagement on this issue. Even if we say, okay, this is everyone having his own moral principles, we must then agree as society, as communities, to say, here, how do we then define this and how do we carry it out? Where my problem is, the last speaker who has just come in, is that we are worried that even if you decriminalize this, how safe are our sisters and brothers out there? How do we get them protected, not only allowed to practice, but how then do we get them protected? How do we get them accepted? So for us as MRM, there's a lot of engagement that will be needed immediately after the findings of the courts.
Yeah. That conversation needing to continue beyond the court process. And what the focus is going to be for the NPA moving forward, just as we watch what comes out of the Western Cape High Court. Dr. Jogani?
Remember, Naledi, the issue here, look, sex work currently, in terms of the law, is still criminalized in South Africa. And as such, as law enforcement agency, in terms of the Constitution, would be obliged to prosecute those cases. But to the extent that we respect the legal processes that is underway, that's why we have taken this position to say that we are going to stop prosecution. And in fact, we're going to withdraw some of the cases, that have been put onto our rolls for prosecution pending this process. But I must agree, with my colleagues, Mr. Mazibuko, as well as Ms. Constance, that at some point in time, government must engage, society around this issue. Because at the end of the day, it's not about NPA, but it's about the society in terms of how then do we take this process forward beyond the court case. I know for a fact that there is a legislative and policy process that is underway around decriminalizing sex work, which I think that will open a window, for society to engage around this issue, so that we can have a position as a country in terms of how then do we take this process forward, in terms of either, we decriminalize or criminalize the sex work in South Africa. But as it is now, we are saying as NPA that we're not going to prosecute cases arising from sex work because there are these processes that are underway. But remember, our function as the National Prosecuting Authority is to prosecute in terms of the law. When the law becomes impugned, by a court process or by the legislative process, we have no other option but to ensure that we stop and cease prosecuting cases arising from sex work in the country.
Okay, Ms. Constance Mate, I'll let you have the final say here. Ideal outcomes for the Asjigi Coalition for Decriminalized Sex Work at the end of this court process. And just some of the points that you want to touch on, Mr. Seth Mazibuko, of course, talking about the conversations we need to be having in our own communities, not just inside of the courts.
Yeah, and I'm very strict on this. And
just apologies, Mr. Mazibuko. That was for Constance Mate. Apologies.
Says we are informed. Look.
Yeah, apologies, Mr. Mazibuko. That was for Ms. Constance Mate. Apologies. Go ahead, Ms. Mate.
Sorry.
Thank you. My last take will be in respondent of the last speaker that just spoke now. In terms of the government must provide for the sex workers another jobs. Right. We cannot see the big impact of the criminalization. Many sex workers have the criminal record. Right. Which company, which institute does employ anyone have a criminal record? Right. Let's think about that. First of all is to decriminalize, and then we think about the other alternative. And then secondly, when we talk about the right of choice, in the Bill of Rights, we have a right of choice of your occupation. When sex workers, they recognize their work as work, why can't we respect their right of choice? This is important to not speak on behalf of the other people. Let the people speak for themselves. Let's do not involve ourselves with other people. If we are dealing with the matter of the sex workers, allow sex workers to voice out themselves and say, this is our right of choice of occupation. This is our right. It's there in the right of bill. So people need to recognize that and respect that. And the only thing that we can think about, how do we protect for those who are in the interest?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's take one last caller. Victor is in Limpopo. Victor, good evening. Thank you for calling.
Good evening, lady. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us.
Yes, I say decriminalization of sex workers should have been done long time before. Because I think if they can decriminalize these sex workers, the rate of GBV can decrease. That's what I believe. And the rate of rapes which are happening also can go down. So let them create a safe haven for sex workers to continue with their work, because some are looking for their families, yes.
Yeah, Victor in Limpopo, thank you so much. And I think that's where we'll close it. Thank you so much to our guests in the panel. Your time, so much appreciated. Thank you to Constance Mate, National Coordinator of the Asjigi Coalition for Decriminalized Sex Work. A common face on our show, Mr. Seth Mazibuko of the Moral Regeneration Movement. Thank you so much for your time. And as well as Dr. Mkhuseli Jogani, Deputy Director for Public Prosecutions at the NPA's National Sex Offences and Community Affairs Unit.